Well, morning, folks. It's a little after. What the hell is it? 16 after 3 in the morning? Okay. It's still Thursday. It's the 26th of May, 2022. We were John C. Roseman, California. I was waiting for this information. Ever since the shooting happened, I was waiting for the information concerning about our shooter. What was driving him crazy at this point? Now, in the last video, I made it. I thought the grandmother had died. Thank God. At this point, she had. But her heart's probably breaking at this point because her grandson had enough somehow. I looked and was reading at the information on CNN's website. I am going to sound controversial at this point. I am warning you right now. It's disturbing enough to see people freaking out and going ape, taking out their emotions, taking out their feelings, taking out everything else they can on the innocent because to the shooters there are no innocents. There are only targets. It doesn't matter how much pain and conflict and chaos is going to be unleashed. To the shooter, it doesn't matter. He's trying to get rid of it the only way he knows how. It had been said and had been reported that he is a loner. But the guys are not going to be mentioning him as much or talking about him as much. But I was waiting for this information that they were popping in. And I'm going to get the link for this and put it into my own. We can feel sorry for everybody who got shot and killed during this thing because it is tragic. And the other tragic thing is this guy, he was in so much pain it wasn't even funny. He was in so much pain at this point. There is no way anybody could figure it out. And they should have. And he had been screaming one way or another that he was in pain. And yet, nobody picked up on it. Nobody. They didn't even bother to pick up on it. The adults around him. Oh, he's nice and quiet. He doesn't bother anybody. He's nice and quiet. He doesn't bother anybody. He's not showing any mental health problems. No known mental health problems that they'd seen or even acknowledged in the first place, especially when you have a kid growing up being bullied all the time because of his race, probably one thing. Two, his financial situation. His financial situation determines whether or not he's looking as if he belonged or not. If his clothing didn't fit or match what people were wearing at the time. If he was wearing hand-me-downs. You know, a long time ago, well before my generation, kids were handed down their hand-me-downs for the parents because that's all the parents could give their kids. And yeah, they may have been looking like slobs, but at least they had something to wear. And probably during that time, they were also bullied as well because they couldn't afford it by the people who actually had the affluent and means to get out and buy new socks or a new shirt or new pants. Shirts had to be sewn up like crazy, and so had the pants because they had to last. You try living on a paycheck per paycheck basis half the time. Let's see how you do this. Even us adults have to do this kind of situation. We live paycheck per paycheck and have to keep taking care of the clothing we got by dousing our clothing with any kind of chemicals we have to keep them going. So much bleach can be used on whites before they start turning or churning. But we have to keep the clothing in good condition because they have to last until they rip to a point where they're no longer, and then we have to send them over to somewhere else if they can be repaired or not. And if not, pray that you have enough money to get another pair of pants or shirt. Well, for me, it would be the pants situation. And the shirts, well, if they're stained like crazy, they're stained like crazy, and I can't help that. But to grow up in an environment where he's being picked on all the time, even probably during his grandparents. Um, Maybe his grandparents were less than loving, or maybe they were loving. Maybe not loving enough to protect him. Something went inside of him, went wrong, that no adult picked up on. No matter how many times I keep reading and hearing from the psychologists, online and also on the news, they're always screwing the damn thing up. They're always screwing it up. In order to get your murdering son of a bitch here, you have to been installed. You're not born with hatred. You're installed with it, which means you are taught. You are experiencing. You are thrown into that situation where you are creating that angry stew inside of you. And you have very little friends. How many times have we keep seeing this damn pattern throughout our history of criminals? How many times? There, there are some times that they're coming from the affluent because they're bored as hell with their own life. They got money, they got privilege, and they decided to have a fling. Melendez brothers, remember those assholes? Yeah, I remember them back in the 1900s and the late, what was it, back in the 80s, the 90s. These schmucks would go out and murder their parents just because. They're still doing time. Well, unless they've already been executed already. Or died in prison. That's good. But they were already rotten in the first place. The other people don't even have the chance. You think wealth and privilege will keep you from being a mass murderer of some sort? No, not in this situation. In Uvalde, this poor kid was tormented for years. Probably started off in the elementary school when he was young and getting bullied because he was different. He was poor, and his clothing showed it. Scientists and psychologists and behavioral therapists have been saying for years, in their own, I'm going to say it, dumbass ways, that environments like that, you don't know what the hell you're going to be coming out of. The bullied will carry on with the bully attitude. They will carry on that hatred, and they will demonstrate it one way or another to people. The fact that the kid had been Ramos, if we're going to be using his name here, Salvador Ramos, at least that's what CNN kept calling him. Salvador Ramos. Growing up in Uvalde, I've only looked at some of the information that's being provided of what the investigators have found out about his lifestyle, what was going on. If he was a good, quiet kid, Why get the ammunition? Why get the ARs? Because at this point, he's already been turned. His anger needs focusing. His head is still stuck in the past at this point. If, and this is a hypothetical, and I don't know if this is, they haven't said it, and there was no way I had seen anything about it. So give me a couple of seconds here. I'm going to put you on pause. Sir, I had to go through had to go through more information concerning about it. He was active in social media, trying to get people to like him, trying to get some kind of friendships going on, including over the seas friendships. But when he started posting messages saying that he was going to cause harm to his grandparent, his grandmother, at that point, it was already too late. He was already off. He was already mentally off at that point over there. But for me, the information that I'm not seeing on here is why targeting those two teachers. Were they representations in his head, or were they the actual teachers that taught the guy? Maybe one of them had. Or were they in the wrong place at the wrong time? Probably. The single classroom that he goes into, was that the classroom that he actually had been in for elementary all that time? Being tormented left and right? All they can see in the kids is the tormentors looking at him and bullying him? Oh yeah, I know this sounds defensive for this shooter and say poor shooter. He murdered. Yes, he did. He murdered. He slaughtered. In the present, he killed. In his head, he was trying to get rid of the damn ghosts. Now, how would I know this? Being a person brought up in certain circumstances like that, I understand what it's like being bullied in school. I've been bullied in school for a long while. But I also tried to keep friends close to me as well, but I was also a lone wolf. But I tried not to keep that boiled anger like I'm going to kill kids when I get out of here just because I feel like it. The thing is, I had things messing with me during that time that I didn't have opportunities to go stark raving mad. Now, if anybody's been seeing my damn videos at this point on my channels, on the only channel I've got out there, people would realize I wasn't like this. I wasn't like this. But I relate with the kid. And I've heard too many psychological babble bullshit coming from other people left and right. And they couldn't apply it to this kid. No known mental health. They were looking for doctor records and probably police reports that would probably gain information. How many fights does it take in school to be put into records? If this kid was being bullied and fighting for his life, how much does it take to put into records of what he was going through? See, back then, nobody gave a shit. During this kid's growth, nobody gave a shit. They didn't see the signs. They didn't care to see the signs. So now I'm probably saying they brought it upon themselves, not the kids. This kid was boiling up in anger and he was confused as hell. He could have just gone to target ranges and shot, which he probably did, or the other places, just to get proficient. But he had that much anger in him. That much hatred, that much rage. It's one thing when I see some of these guys and I'm trying to hear them feel how sorry that they are. Do I know? My mother had been in between jobs, had been on GR for a long while. We couldn't afford clothing all that much. My mother had worked her ass off trying to take care of two boys. A woman working in a men's world. Going going to school over at Coldwater. At least there I didn't have any fights because I didn't have anybody I hated. Now, I had people across the street from my house and from my apartment. They were living in projects. They already had attitudes because they were living in those kind of situations. But I didn't hold it against them. As a young kid, I wasn't brought up that way. But I did have my fair share of a fight or two. When I was living in Arleta at the time, between 76 and 79, I had to fight. I had to fight on campus. I had to fight off campus. They didn't like white people at school. The kids. I was one of the few white people in the neighborhood that they could pick on. And because I had gotten into a car accident and gotten into school with a little bit of a bandage rap because of it, I was an easy target for everybody. They like seeing pain. This is from the kids. This wasn't from the adults because they saw it at the time was just childhood behavior. It only got to a point where they saw the more pain and then having administration coming on their ass because the parents would be complaining about it. The problem is my mother would have to be complaining every single day about it, and I didn't tell her about it. I had to fight my own battles. I had to learn how to fight my own battles, regardless of what the teacher said. And I had that in the junior high too. 79, 81, Patrick Henry Junior High out in Granada Hills, California. Oh yeah. But it was mixedly racial over there. I just had one or two idiots over there just decided they want to keep picking on me. I wasn't allowed to fight during that time. And it sucked. It royally sucked. I could not do what I could do, which was defend myself. When I got into high school, I stayed away from people. I learned how to stay away from people. But I was gathered into a group of people, racially mixed, who didn't care whether or not I was a lone wolf or not. So were they. But we didn't go out causing damage or hating anybody about it. We actually cared. That's the thing. That was the thing. I grew up in a different environment and not like this kid. My environment, I was dealing with a mother who had health problems, dealing with a grandmother with a stroke. I was lucky enough I was in an environment that I didn't have to grow up to be a suicidal maniac or Some guy who wants to get rid of his pain by shooting people left and right. It's cruel. It's ugly for me to say, but nobody would understand this kid unless you've walked his shoes. You've walked in his path before. But he was so far in his anger and his pain. And no matter how many times he would try to cry for help, nobody picked up on the damn thing. It's no wonder we've got more shooters or more suicides going on. Because the adults are just too damn blind to it. And if the kids are hip on it, they should have been saying more and more about it, but the adults were not listening. Do I blame the adults? We can blame the shooter for what he did. And it's not going to bring back the kids or the teachers that he did wrong to. I hate to have sympathy for the kid, but I do. Because the system failed him. His family failed him. The school failed him. And they didn't even realize it until... And the kids were still the innocent victims, regardless. If the teachers were part, and I'm saying a big if at this point, were part of the kid of Ramos's past, if they had been instrumental in not helping him one way or another, even trying to find out whether or not if he was having issues or not, did they deserve it? No. But in Ramos's mind, they did. Either they represented or they were part of it. According to Ramos's mind. How do I know this? Because he was a bullied kid with a hell of a lot of anger. And he didn't have the self-esteem to fight back. There are people like that who depend upon others as shields all the time and depend upon them. They don't grow in strength. They don't grow in character. They don't grow, period. They're still an angry person, an angry child. Grown up as an adult, but still an angry kid. And he wanted payback. He wanted payback in the worst way. I never said in any one of my videos, say I am a guru, I am a doctor, I'm a shrink or anything. But I know what it's like to be bullied. I know what it's like to have that kind of anger, but his level of rage, it was festering like crazy. I didn't want mine to be that way when I was growing up as a kid. I didn't want to be that way. I didn't want to be having people bully me around. And it pissed me off that I wasn't allowed to fight back in certain circumstances. I had to take it in. I wasn't allowed to fight back in certain circumstances. I had to take it in. Even growing up as an adult, 18 and 19-year-old, getting into different jobs, if you're getting pushed at and pushed at, it's hard to push back because you have to follow rules and regulations. Otherwise, you're no damn good and you're kicked out. So, yes, I understand about harboring that much rage and anger. Even as an adult, even as an older adult, I know the feeling. Because we too can have that. We too can feel that much pain and agony and distrust and discord of how much it hurts right in here. Right in here. Festering and boiling up. No amount of antacids, no amount of medications can get rid of that much anger infestation. You have to do something about it. That's why I do a lot of recordings. That's why I do a lot of recordings. And it's the only way I know how to get the pain level and the frustration and the rage out. Do I understand what it's like to be picked on? Yes. And bullied? Yes. As a kid and as an adult. The workplace environment, the ones I was going into growing up, some of them were hostile and the others were just there and I had to adapt. Working at a fast food industry, it's hard to dealing with customer service. It's hard to dealing with customers and give good customer service. You have to be on top of your game, and you have to have something inside of you that says you're there not just for the paycheck, but a lot of us are there for the paycheck. At that age, at a teenage age, you're there for the paycheck. You're not there to be good in customer service because it's not a calling. Unless, of course, you feel like restaurant services is your calling. And fixing food and customer service are your history, are your future, be my guest. There may have been a lot of good managers out there or just adequate managers. But even there, the managers are only responsible for the restaurant and for the employees, but to a point. If they notice that there's something wrong, they'll try to approach. But they got to make sure that the employee is not going to be screwing up with the operation of the company or of the French or of the business that the manager is trying to take care of, that he's in charge of. He's got a lot of things to weigh on his mind. Was it his responsibility to let people know about the guy and his rage? It could have been. If the manager taken time necessary to talk to cops about him or his family, but that's not his job. His job is to manage his restaurant. Was it the responsibility of the school officials in the high school to let the law enforcement or anybody else knowing that he had problems? If they were brought to the school administrator's attention, it should have been. But if they weren't, how are they supposed to know? How are they supposed to know that Ramos is troubled to a point of doing what he did? And I hope they tear themselves apart over this. Because it could have been one of those last barriers that could have prevented it. But they said no, known, because no one saw it. No one cared to see the signs. No one cared to understand about mental health illness. Nobody. Did the parents know? Well, the kid was raised under his grandparents, wasn't he? Where was the parents? Not enough information, so I can't make an observation on this. But about his grandmother, I can't. That I can't fathom why he shoots her unless something about between them was off. Why didn't she get him the help he needed? Lack of insurance, lack of money. That happens to even us adults out these days, from the young kids all the way to the older ones. If you were out here in California, supposedly you had some kind of coverage. Currently, right now, they had something like a welfare system, or actually a LA care system. They call it for those with low or almost zero income. They called it something else decades ago. ORSA. They called it ORSA. Families could get free health care under the county system of Los Angeles at that point, and they still can. Mental health, physical health. As long as it was reported, as long as the doctors were seeing them, as long as they were allowed to see the doctors. So that's another situation with Uvalde. Were they just as generous as Los Angeles? For a small community, about 30K, sounds like my own town of Roseman over here. A one-dock shop. But they have their own medical community that they're actually able to pay for. And was the insurance able to cover the family? Did the guy actually ever see the doctors, and the doctors ever pick up on him? Or did he just skate through things? There's too many questions in my head of how many safety checks, how many checks and balances this guy had that he slipped through that could have prevented this. That should have prevented this. And yeah, I am angry about it. I'm angry about their system. I'm angry that being bullied all your life, you have no family, no friends to back you up. It's no wonder you build it up as a damn volcano ready to go off. His only friend? An AR-15 with some rounds in it? And the innocents have to be right there because they're going to get nailed. They're going to get shot to death, regardless. Because it doesn't matter inside a guy's screwed up head. Everyone else is to blame. It doesn't matter how old they are. They're representations of it. They're going to get shot. This is pain. This is anger. This is frustration. This is cold rage. I'm not a shrink. I don't have a PhD or a BA or an MA or whatever the hell they call them these days. I've seen too much. I've read too much. You had to have something boiling inside of you, a rage. Something that caused that fire. You had to have been that angry. So angry. that you're willing to burn the world down for it. He tried to reach out to people. He tried to reach out to people one way or another. And in his changed state, he did. Only they were too late. The monster was already loose. The monster wanted blood. And there had to be victims. I got no right to talk to people about this. No right at all. How dare I? How dare I root for the damn shooter? I'm not rooting for him. I'm not blaming the families of the slaughtered. The kids, they were just innocent victims. But in a lunatic's point of view, they were targets. They were the past. And they shot. And they were shot again. He wasn't doing this for an arcade. He didn't know why. He only acted on his rage. Something snapped in him somewhere, sometime. So yeah, I do look at bullies as assholes, because probably in their lifetime they were also bullied, and they have to pass on that damn crap to other people. The cycle continues. I know what it's like to be bullied even as a teenager, living in a neighborhood so close to a high school, and yet, just by a presence, just by attitudes, just by whatever, something about them did make them as friends, made them as enemies. And I had that too. I learned how to hide. I tried to get along, but I couldn't. And the thing of it is about a bully, they don't remember the victims. The bully will not remember the victims. No matter how many times the victim tries to remind the bully. This is not Hollywood. This is reality check. A long time ago, I had a high school nemesis. He didn't even realize it. He didn't give a shit. Loudmouth, large and fat, obnoxious son of a bitch, who lived in a family, had an older brother who was a criminal, dealt with drugs and guns. Graduated the same year I did. I was glad I moved away from the damn area. I didn't want to be around this asshole's presence any longer. I'd been there long enough. Couldn't make friends with the guy either. Couldn't. He lived here all his life, had a life, and enjoyed every single second of it. While the people who had been bullied had to deal with the feelings and the nightmares and the memories and try to manage their own life. And yet, the anger still resides. I still have to work on my anger issues regarding this bully. I always figured karma would be biting him in the ass. Kind of figured that karma would be biting me in the ass on some occasions, except putting too many challenges in my life that I had to keep overcoming. In the end, I may feel like I'm the bully, but I think I'm the better man. At least I got a heart that bleeds. And at least I cared about my family a great deal. At least I loved them. And I grieve heavily. The opposite end of the bullied. Can I ever forgive the other guy? One day. One day. There's a few other people out there that I still have to work through my anger issues over. But I have to work on me. I'm not working on anybody else. I have to work on me and my own anger issues. Ramos didn't do that. And nobody picked up on him. So now he's a murderer. He was a young man, a boy, crying for help, and nobody listened. And he did it the worst way possible of trying to get help. He murdered. I don't forgive him on that one. There's no way. I don't forgive him. I don't condone him. But I try to understand his motives because there are other people like him ready to go. As I said before a long time ago, mental health is a time bomb ready to go off. Right conditions, right timing, and the victims all fall. It's important for people to get health. It's important for people to get help regarding their health, regardless if it's physical or mental. Even I must. Because I sure as hell don't want to turn into that kind of person who only sees the pain, but doesn't see the pain he's inflicting upon others for a long, long time. Maybe he was looking for suicide by cop, but I doubt it. What was he going to do after he shot up everybody? There was not enough ammunition to satisfy that much pain. He can only carry so much. But maybe he was looking forward to that. Suicide by cop. In order to do suicide by cop, you need to do something drastic. You need to do something to catch people's attention. The hard way. Kill the innocent. Spill the blood. And at the same time, plead for mercy. Be released from life because he doesn't want to deal with what he is, what he was called and shamed to be of. He was a human being, but people didn't see him that way. And then he had to shed blood to prove his point. Dumbass as it was. Mental health is no joke. I had said it in my earlier videos that there's an international representation of it happening on a daily basis for the past 2 to 3 months already. And people are now catching wind to it. What a world we live in. We can't even see what's going on with ourselves. How we're supposed to help our neighbors, our family. We can't even see past the logs we have in our eyes. We tried to take them out, but they got new ones growing in. So how can we see the other person's behavior if we can't even uproot the shit we got? It should never have happened. All the shootings should never have happened. Especially this one. Now we'll remember Uvalde and those like it. And I will mourn heavily for them. But I also remember why the shooter did what he did. And that has to be remembered as well.